to a new edition of the Gerety Talks. I'm Lucy Ongay, the co-founder of the Gerety Awards, the award that brings together a jury to select the best in advertising from a powerful perspective. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for our weekly episodes where we chat with some of the marketing and creative industry's true change makers. Today, we're having a chat around production with our guest, Jordana Freydberg, executive producer with Biscuit Filmworks in LA. Hi, Jordana.
Hi.
Whitney Cusack, executive producer and filmmaker. Hi, Whitney, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
And Lisa Mehling, producer and owner of independent production company Chelsea Pictures. Thanks,
Hello.
Lisa, also for joining. Welcome all, and thank you for joining us today. So to begin with, can you please introduce yourselves and tell us more about your job roles and your companies? Lisa, would you like to start?
Nice to be here. Thank you for having us. I have a production company. Chelsea's been around for a couple of decades. And we, our business is working with filmmakers and partnering with our brands and agencies to make the most compelling films possible. So I really feel like I'm in the business of director management and creative execution.
Whitney, would you like to continue?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Whitney Cusack, like she just said. I am an executive producer and filmmaker. So I've been fortunate throughout my career to work in agency and the production side. So a few years back, I started my own company called Realistic Media, and I do freelance work on that, under that brand, under that name. So.
Jordana?
Yeah, great. So hello, thank you for having me. I'm an executive producer at Biscuit Filmworks in Los Angeles. And to kind of piggyback off Lisa's comment about director management, I work with usually a specific roster of directors and help them to bring in and ideally execute commercial campaigns and really help them with their creative development on a larger scale as well. So
let's start with the easy question. What are the biggest challenges that you're facing today? Whitney, you're laughing a lot. I think you should start.
I'd say budgets and time. I feel like
I'm so glad you said it, so we didn't have to say it.
thank you.
I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's always an issue. Obviously, as producers, we always face that. There's never enough money, but I feel like in the most recent years, it's been even more of a crunch. People calling saying, okay, we need this, but the deadline is this. It's already set with the client. So can you make it happen? And who are we to say no? Yeah, so it's budgets and time are the major challenges right now.
I mean, I definitely second that. That was, of course, that was my first thought, but I did want to try to bring in something other than that, which would be protecting the edit for our directors, really kind of trying to protect their creative vision. I mean, that's a challenge that is a tale as old as time and something that we're constantly fighting for, but I would say that's a big thing that I'm personally dealing with regularly.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of those. And I would just add that when your passion is the talent and helping them get the opportunities so that they can showcase what they're capable of, it's really, really, really hard to break directors into advertising. And I think it's just getting harder. I think that'll be an ongoing challenge, but yeah.
And you mentioned the creativity. How has your work changed with new technologies? Everybody's talking about this now, so I'm curious to find out.
You guys?
I actually really wanted to talk about Zoom and how that's changed so much as we sit here on a Zoom. and I'm sure everyone can agree with this, that the calls that we do with directors when a project comes in are so important to establishing a relationship with the agency and giving them the confidence to hire your director. And now that's become a full performance because you're on video, the director's on video. And that's something that changed since COVID that I think has made our jobs a lot more interesting and at times better and at times worse. So that was the first technology that popped to my head, but I know, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to actual creative as well.
I think in regards to technology, one thing that I was concerned about at the top of the pandemic was, will we ever be able to be on set again? We're sending all of these drop kits and lighting and things like that. And then in regards to the broader aspect of technology, when I'm teaching or either doing these workshops with students, my concern for the next generation is, will they have an appreciation for the production that we fell in love with as producers? Or will they just know the quick turn, the fast things, oh, we could do this with that, we could plug this in and it'll happen for us. So I think that's kind of where my mind has been with new technology that's coming out.
I think that's great. I mean, I would just build on that, because I think when we think of filmmakers coming into the industry and how they're learning, and I think on the upside, technology has made it so easy to express yourself as a filmmaker. And that's a wonderful thing, because all kinds of people are getting access to really big platforms. On the other end of the scale of really just the most innovative technology, that our industry has always, we've always been on the trend, be it digital cameras or all the way now to AI. I think, we all know filmmakers are technicians as well as storytellers. They really, really have to know their craft in whatever way makes sense for them. But I think we would all acknowledge that the great directors are pretty, they know the language of all kinds of different ways in which to express themselves, which all have some form of technology baked in. And I think it's so fascinating to see how 2, 3, 4 different directors will interpret a script and use different technology and come up with something unique to each other. There's no two same ways to do it. So I love it when you have a director who really is curious and passionate and so smart, and then they just use it and it just pops. So I think ease of entry is a beautiful thing right now. And then the tricks of the craft are incredible right now on the other end of the scale.
Do you think maybe this, we could call it old school way of doing things, is going to disappear sometime? Like being replaced for everything new, or no?
I mean, everyone, you guys are also accomplished, but it's storytelling and image making. Those are crafts that have been around and will be around. It's just how you interpret it. What's the platform? Obviously, things run all over the world now. You're not connected to a television. So I think that true, I don't think it's old school at all. I just think it's like the foundation of what our industry is based on. And then once you have the foundation, it would be like having music knowledge. You don't have to go to a conservatory, but you really have to know sound and music, and then you interpret it from there. I think filmmaking is the same, how you take all the different, all the aspects you can utilize. And then that's what, they put their stamp on. So I think old school's, I don't know. I don't even call it old school. I call it foundational knowledge.
The 101.
And talking about new technologies, how is AI affecting or changing your sector, and what is your opinion on it?
such a big topic. For me, what, I kind of, to take off of what, or to piggyback on what Lisa was just saying, it's like the idea of storytelling, and I think the ability to pivot, to be smart, to come up with solutions for a client, that's something that AI is never going to be able to replace. I mean, hopefully not. But I think there are some things that personally I'm excited about. For example, there's a company called Wonder that is backed by, Steven Spielberg and other folks. And the goal is to make character animation and the ability to place a character into a live action scene using AI much more efficient. And, my kind of EP brain goes off. I'm like, oh, I love that, because that's a challenge that we face is, the sort of clunkiness of shooting a live action scene when you're going to be adding in an animated character. That's something that, to go back on what Whitney was talking about, the shrinking budgets and timelines, that could be really helpful to help us be more creative and be more adventurous with being able to place a character in a scene without so much kind of machine behind it. It makes I feel badly saying that for my friends in the post world, maybe, but the hope is that maybe there can be more of that then, and that people's focus maybe just shifts more to character design versus the lighting references and all that stuff that you have to put in. So to me, that's the most exciting thing in my world about AI. The thought of AI replacing a director to me is just absurd. I refuse. Maybe that's just me being old school, and I will never accept it.
Whitney, you go for it.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I feel like on the agency side, the challenge would be getting a client to buy into that and showing them the value of it. Because like you just said, it is such a cool option. It will save money and time and all the things that we have been discussing, but just with any creative that comes through, like as the producer talking to your creative team and then account going back to the client, like, this could be amazing. Will you love it? Please buy it. And then they don't. And then it's that whole cycle. So I think it's going to take a minute probably for clients to buy in to how amazing it could be.
Yeah, and I'll just add, because I'm lifting it from a conversation I was in, there's, first of all, of course, there have to be guardrails on AI, and that's being developed and really important. But there's such doomsday concern about what AI is going to usher in. And I heard one of my directors the other day just talk about how it's going to be incredible for so many good things, education, access to medicine, everything related to stemming, and solving climate change. So I thought that's so much better. It's just to embrace all the good that's going to come, and to, be mindful that we have to have guidelines. But I'm kind of over the doomsday fear of the robotic future. That's just me.
And what, in your experience, is the most important quality in a producer or an executive producer?
Who wants to jump on this one? I mean, I like to think that fluidity and flexibility and the agility. I mean, I love all these buzzwords, but you really are kind of everything to everyone sometimes, especially with these two business owners, below me, at least on my screen. I think you just are constantly having to be a bit of a leader, in the sense where you can't get too ruffled, you can't be too emotional, and you have to be, and sometimes we're a mom, sometimes we're a best friend, sometimes we're a creative collaborator, sometimes we're a problem solver, and I think for someone who didn't come up in production, I came through a different angle, and I never line produced. So my ability to fix a very specific production problem isn't necessarily that great, but my ability to smooth things over and make everyone feel confident and happy is strong. So I think you just have to find, pardon the dogs downstairs, you just have to find the right balance of kind of being everything to everybody.
Yeah, agreed for sure. I think, like you said, mother, best friend, sister, counselor, depending on the day. Sometimes all of that in 1 minute. I think too, it's just like really to piggyback off what you were saying, it's knowing people and being able to read the room. Because what I love about what we get to do is that we're pulling on people that are at the top of their craft to come in and all work together. So if you're all just staying in your lane and you're at 100% on your day or 80%, then it makes for magic. So I feel like, yeah, it's a privilege, but it's also kind of knowing who's where. If your sound guy's having a rough day, talking to him, pulling him to the side, like being able to do that, and just knowing that you are collaborating, even on the agency side, with your creative team, and being able to gain the trust of the people you're working with.
I think that's so well said. I think that's so essential. And I would only add somebody also who just can really keep their vision on the goal and not get too distracted by all that comes at the producers. And so just almost, that tenacity of watching the horizon line, and, what Whitney and Jordana said, all of that as well.
So it takes a lot of psychology, right? These kind of skills.
I'd be curious to know, like, how many of us have similar family backgrounds, or, you know what I mean? Just like have grown up with certain dynamics in our households, and why we ended up being so good at making so many people happy. I don't know, maybe that's just me. I'd be curious.
Good point.
And you mentioned about problem solving. So what is the most difficult production problem you had to solve?
That's such a fun question. I mean, I had one story that I thought of when I read this question, and that was, for me, it was so difficult because it was like, sometimes we talk about the emotional aspects of our job, and I was on set and we did real people casting for a specific role that was very emotional for the person involved, and they were not comfortable after all, on the day of the shoot. And everyone had sort of done what they could to convince this person to continue on and to come on camera and do their role that they had agreed to do. And we didn't have a backup plan. So I had to sit with that person and really kind of open my heart up and be empathetic and try to show them that this was a safe space. And that was not an easy task when you're watching the clock and you're thinking, I know this is hard for you. I so feel for you, but if we don't get this moving, we're in trouble. Like, financially, we have an obligation here. So for me, that was so hard because it like tore my heart out, and you're trying to be both people. Again, it's about being everything to everyone. And that was really hard, but it worked out and everything was great in the end.
One of the more recent ones for me, I was doing a shoot, we were on location, and it was the pre-pro day before, and the client calls myself and the owner of the company that I was working with at the time, and basically told us that we were going to lose the talent because their agent had not agreed to the terms in the contract. A lot of that could have been solved had we had insight into that contract, and they kind of handed it over to us to handle, which we begged for a few weeks prior. So I had to leave the pre-pro, talk to him, talk to the agent, help him figure out kind of SAG things and all of this stuff. And luckily we got the talent on set the next day. We had to change the way we were shooting quite a bit, but it all worked out. So I think, yeah, I mean, we could come up with a list of issues, but I feel like what I've seen is when production is not given full insight into something for whatever reason, then that's where things kind of fall through the cracks.
Lisa?
I'll limit it to a one-word answer and just say COVID.
And so yeah, let's change the subject. How do you nurture your production and creative knowledge? Where do you look for new ideas and inspiration? Not COVID, for sure.
I mean, I'll just say for me, I just make sure I make time for the things I love. And that's a lot of things. But invariably I go down some rabbit hole of something I'm passionate about, and it will just somehow be relevant to a conversation or a creative idea. I live in New York City, so it's easy just to walk out the door and, you know, just really look at street fashion, or go to a gallery and just see what's inside. You know, I wish I had more time for reading. Every time I read a book, fiction, nonfiction, it just like explodes my mind. And I wish I had more time for that. So I just think sucking up all of it. Hey, that's what's great about our business, because invariably everything in your mind has a place to land.
For me right now, I feel like I'm in a really big mentorship space. You know, I'm getting a lot of mentorship, and I'm also giving a lot of mentorship. It's probably has something to do with my age and where I'm at in my career. But I find that mentorship and really leaning on my colleagues here at Biscuit that know a lot more about production than I do has been incredibly expanding to my process. You know, I mean, it's like, I feel like I went to grad school in the last year and a half, you know, so I have to call out my friends here at Biscuit for being just an incredible source of inspiration.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the same. It's a mix of the two, like going outside, definitely being in a new city. Well, newish now. I've been here for 2.5 years in Chicago, but just exploring this and all of the corners and the neighborhoods and different things, going to art expos and music, meeting new people, that has truly expanded the way I produce. Even producing this move for myself from one state to the other. So yeah, I think it comes from anywhere. It could be a dream that you have. Like I dream quite a bit. So I sometimes I write those down, and those are helpful weeks later. So I think just having your eyes open to the world around you, you'll be inspired all the time.
And Lisa, you and your team at Chelsea are regarded for your commitment to emerging talent and are proud to have launched the commercial career of several of the industry's most revered directors. How do you spot these directors? What is it in them that catches your attention?
I mean, I guess different things for different directors. I've been doing this for a long time. So for me, it's now just really trusting my instinct. And I feel like I've come to understand through the years of trial and error what characteristics a director must have, and then giving a lot of room for them to, you know, their unique point of view, their unique way of making a film is what matters more than anything. And do they have a reason to say, hey, there's 2,000 directors that are currently available to brands. Why does this director bring something new or fresh that the industry should make time for? That's a really big ask, because there's no shortage of incredible talent. So it's always challenging myself to say, why would anyone stop for a minute and say, yeah, there is something there, and I'm gonna either remember their name or give them a shot. And I think if you don't have that level of something singular, something that really pops, it's never going to happen. You know, that's my point of view. So I'm always looking for that. And then really, I find it essential that a director have a story. Doesn't matter what it is, but it's their story. And I find it that's what I hold on to. And if I'm inspired by their story, then I feel like if I can go out and share their story, I'll find someone on the brand or agency side that is inspired by that story too. So it's kind of like who they are and what's their story. And that's usually it. And I feel like if I sense it, I'll find somebody out there who is bold, who will sense it as well.
Mm.
And it's trial and error. You know, every director I've signed has not, you know, been in it for the long, because it's an industry that we know is, you know, very, very competitive. So for every director that makes it all the way to the top, there's probably a few that didn't. But you know, I feel like it's essential to hold on to it initially and then just go for it, and see when they get the opportunity, what they have to bring to it.
And Jordana, you began your career in live music in NYC, booking tours for an eclectic array of artists from yo-yoma to legendary guitar shredder Joe Satriani. So how is this different from your work today as an executive producer for Biscuit Filmworks? I think you mentioned something about being new to production.
Yeah,
working.
so yeah, I came in not through the traditional path. And the biggest thing for me was that I knew from a pretty young age that like I loved being close to a creative process and to an artistic process, but that there wasn't a discipline that I felt so compelled to explore that was going to become my life. But I love being adjacent to it. It makes me really feel full. So that was similar when I was a booking agent to now when I work in production supporting directors. So that's one thing that did carry over. And also this sense of kind of being somewhat of an agent as an executive producer. So that role of being able to sell talent, that's something that was ingrained in me right out of college, was how do you do that, right? Sell and market artistic talent. So that's something, and also being able to handle artist personalities, you know, people who went to art school or film school and kind of don't come from your traditional, you know, I have a journalism degree, like it's just a very different vibe of a person. So I did learn how to navigate that mindset from an early part of my career. But obviously a lot of it doesn't carry over. And the biggest thing for me that drew me to production was the feeling that I could actually be in more of the conversations that would later come to life in the creative, whereas I'm not a musician. So it's not like I was telling Joe Satriani how to play, you know, a specific guitar riff during his concert. So I felt very removed from the process. And I love that the biggest difference of being part of production is that you're so close to the process. I would say that's the biggest difference for me.
That's interesting. Yeah. And Whitney, you're also a filmmaker and you conduct workshops in academic arenas and mentorship programs that bolster multicultural talent. What is the most important thing you teach, or what do you think is the key in your teaching? What you would like to tell your students?
I think for me, because I learned it myself, is that your career in production is not linear. Like you may think I'm going to go from A to B, C, D, E. Sometimes you're jumping the alphabet and it's confusing, but there are doors that open that you might not have thought were something you wanted. Sometimes walk through that door because it'll lead you to even greater things. Like for me, I never even thought about advertising, but I always knew I wanted to do production and be on a film set. And then now I've been able to do both. So that's something that I always kind of drill into any class that I'm talking to. And also remember your why, because as we have all been saying, this is not easy. There are many times I've Googled, where do my skills translate outside of this? Because why do I do this every day? But I think when you remember your why and why you kind of fell in love with production or telling stories in this way, then it kind of keeps you aligned with the purpose.
And a question to close. What excites you most about the future of the industry?
I mean, for me, it's all about the talent. You know, it's all about finding I am motivated by finding the next big thing in directing. You know, I mean, that just excites me so much. And I think the focus on diversity and inclusion has been such an incredible journey. I'm sure everyone on this Zoom can agree with that. And I think it's, you know, it's a challenge as well as getting directors over that hump to be recognized in the advertising space. But it's that challenge to me is what excites me about the future, because it's never, year to year, it's never going to be the same as an EP. It's always going to be changing. And I think the talent and how that changes, that's what really excites me.
I think for me, same, like new talent, and just what I'm looking to do, even as I'm in this new city and talking to more schools and doing more workshops, is letting younger people know that this could be a path as well. I found production in 7th grade, luckily, because my school had a TV studio that I was a part of and was able to kind of hone my skills in all of these, you know, things that I was thinking, well, where could I use this skill? Or the imagination was so broad. But yeah, I think just letting kids in middle school and high school know, like, you could make money doing something you love. Like, what you're drawing over here could be an animation on Netflix a year from now if you stay on a certain path. So I think that's what I'm most excited about. And with that, it'll be diversifying the landscape more.
Yeah, I mean, you both really said it. I think on a personal level, I've a few directors that I'm working with that I'm just so determined to break down some of the traditional barriers in some of the categories where you know, women and people of color have simply not been in the mix. And we are making great headway as an industry. It's really inspiring to see all the different people in a position of power to move the needle. But I feel like it's like that image of a wave cresting. I just feel like I'm like on the wave, and it's I hope it's about to crash, because I think once it moves, it's not going to go backwards. But I think there's momentum building, and I just feel it. And I just want to be around to see it happen. And it's really, really energizing, because we know there's individuals attached. It's not just a movement. It's all these people whose lives are going to change or have changed. So that really, that matters a lot to me, and I know to all of you. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing this time with us and telling us a little bit more about the world of production and your jobs and careers. And best of luck with all the projects that you carry on during this year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
having me.
conversation.